Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 10:02, and we are going to go ahead and get started with our EPSG meeting today. Thank you, everyone, for spending some quality time with us this cold Friday morning. It is super cold where I am. I hope you all are warm and comfy where you are. Sit back, get comfortable, and we will share a bit of an update on where the SBEC went in our last meeting and where we anticipate going here in our next one in just a few weeks. Just the typical housekeeping. Once again, we are super excited to have you here. We want to make sure we're able to capture who all is able to attend our EPSG meetings. So if you'll please rename yourself in the Zoom with your name and your organization, we do capture those so we can follow up as is helpful. This meeting is recorded and will be posted on the website. You're welcome to share it. We encourage you to share it with your stakeholder groups in any way that is helpful. Make sure you're staying on mute unless you are speaking. We love having cameras on so we can see each other smile as often as possible. And we love active engagement and participation balanced with each of us monitoring our airtime so we all have a chance to step into this space and contribute. Today, our agenda will walk through updates related to our Chapter 228 adoption, the 231 discussion, a wonderful and exciting update related to reading academies for educator preparation programs, some updates related to Chapter 230, a review or overview of a petition for rulemaking that the SBEC received at our last meeting, and then just a quick preview of our February 16th SBEC board meeting. We did not receive any questions in response to the email we sent to EPSG maybe a week, 10 days ago. So if you do have a question and want to shoot that to us in the chat, we have time at the end, we'll do our best to answer those. Jumping right in, we will look at Chapter 228, which is going to adoption. This is the culmination of more than a year's worth of work on the part of a lot of people on this call outside of staff. So I want to say thank you there. And I will turn it over to Jessica and Marilyn, who will artfully lead us through a quick update here.
Thanks very much, Emily. Again, good morning to all you beautiful people. It's nice to see you on the screen. Added sunshine in my day for sure, because it's freezing in the William B. Travis building. So your sunny smiles are going to help me make it through in this building today. Really quickly, we're really excited to be at this point, to be coming back to the board in February to ask for their support in adopting the new Chapter 228 rules. A lot of what I say to you is not going to be a surprise at all. It's going to be the same story because you wonderful people have partnered with us tirelessly to get us to a really exciting point. You know, from this slide, we started off long ago, the 3-lane highways, had 3 big important goals with these rules, getting them reorganized and integrating the components of the EPF and the excitability around the residency prep route. Over several conversations, we were encouraged by the board and many stakeholders to see what more we could do to ensure that we had the appropriate supports for our important candidates going through this process throughout the entirety of their preparation. You all saw the various versions of the rule text, our time with color coding from meeting to meeting. And by the September meeting, we committed to additional stakeholder engagement and were able to, with your support and so many others, come back in December with a proposal that did the things that the board continuously reminded us we needed to do: maintain changes that increase the supports for our teacher candidates, while also increasing the flexibility for our many talented EPP partners in this work to be able to successfully implement these rules. When we advance to the next slide, we'll see several of the areas that were, I think, the big hits, the areas that we were most excited about making changes, but also making sure that we increase flexibility to support effective implementation of those changes. The field-based experiences, the increase in the hours there, but also the ability to expand the various ways in which individuals had opportunities to complete those FBEs has been a highlight and a consistent message. the opportunities for us to work together in partnership on how we can further strengthen pre-service for our candidates, and the importance of reinforcing the use of skills-based practice throughout that process. Lastly, at the bottom there, everyone has talked a lot about the importance of supporting those late hire candidates. We know that not everybody's going to be able to get classrooms and vacancies filled before the start of school, but being able to still support those candidates who have those opportunities to step into the role of the profession of a lifetime, making sure they have the additional supports to be successful in that, and also making sure that the rules are clear and allow you to provide them with the support that's needed. My last big hit slide here was the additional updates that came through stakeholder engagement about the change from weeks to hours when we're talking about clinical teaching time and requirements, the importance of that co-teaching opportunity. We spent a lot of time about the field supervisor training requirements, and thanks to many of the folks on this particular call and the many people that they represent, we were able to incorporate some additional flexibility about those trainings around field supervisors. And then lastly, we've spent a lot of time over these meetings and work on these rules, talking about observation and coaching, some flexibilities, but also adjusted the rules to talk about timelines in which these things need to happen to ensure that candidates are fully supported. Those were my 3 slides, probably more brief than I've ever been in my life. I get to go to mute now, and you get to hear a little bit from my wonderful colleague, Jessica.
Thanks, Marilyn. So as Marilyn shared, we had an opportunity to discuss the proposed rule text with the board in December. We also had an opportunity to preview some of the proposed timelines associated with implementation of the rule. I think there's been a lot of questions around like timeline related to the new proposed residency preparation route. And so just clarifying there this sort of the big tagline for all of 228. You can see the timeline for rulemaking, but with the rules going into effect in September of 2024. That would mean that once pending SBEC and SBOE action, TA staff would anticipate opening up an application, posting the application in April of 2024 for approval for that route, and would anticipate rolling review and SBEC approval. Thinking about candidate timeline, given timelines for review, we would anticipate that programs would be approved during the 24-25 academic year, but for implementation beginning in the 25-26 academic year. So, and there being an opportunity in 25-26, if candidates had been engaged in residency preparation, they could transfer into that route for their final year of the residency. Or new candidates enrolled could engage, and then in 26-27 you'd have sort of the fully functioning 2-year pathway. Liz, question on this part?
Sure, and I apologize if this was answered at the December meeting since I wasn't able to be there, but in 24-25 EPPs that are already piloting residencies in districts, I mean, basically they're being certified through the clinical teaching route. So would you still be able to continue doing this and refining any practices that are related to residency? Is that the plan?
Exactly. So, programs are, again, many programs are already engaged in this type of residency preparation. Those candidates would be prepared via the clinical route, some candidates via, ACP route, but in a residency clinical model. And so, the thought would be then the program's preparing their application, gathering artifacts of practices, right? Going through the formal SBEC approval process that would then formally approve the program for offering the route and the associate certificate. I think that's why we also named here that if you have candidates who are engaging in their first year of preparation in 24-25, the program gets approved for the residency route for 25-26. As they're going into the residency year, they could be transferred into that route because you're already engaging in that type of preparation, and they could graduate with that enhanced standard certificate. Great. Broader timelines just to stamp as well. So again, rules become effective as of September 1, 2024. Implementation of those new requirements is required. I think there were questions from stakeholders around continuing approval reviews and ASAP accountability. So just to clarify here, Given that our continuing approval reviews are lagging cycles, and we want to see kind of full cohorts of candidates engage with new requirements, in 24-25, the new 228 rules would not yet be included in the 24-25 review cycle, because again, it's a lagging review. Same in 25-26, because we wouldn't have that kind of like full candidate cohort. So beginning in 26-27, that is when we would anticipate the new 228 rules included in the continuing approval review cycle, because we'd be reviewing records from 25-26. On the accountability side, because again, there's for some groups of candidates, shifts in the number of observations required, just clarifying that those clinical experiences that end in 24-25 are evaluated using the previous requirements, and that clinical experiences that end in 25-26 would be evaluated using the new requirements. So again, I think us tracking kind of cohort implementation, I just want to make that clear when these sort of components hit, for lack of a better word, when it comes to this new rule implementation. I think further talking timelines, just as kind of orient to where we are in the overall process. Post the SBEC voting this through at proposal, the 228 rules went out for public comment. That public comment period is open through the end of the month. We appreciate folks who've already submitted public comments. Encourage folks to submit comment and share perspectives with the board. And then we do anticipate this going to the SBEC at adoption in February. And again, that would then mean it would go to the SBOE in April, and we have that lagged effective implementation date, which would be September 2024. I think as we step back and reflect on kind of the scope of proposed changes within the updated Chapter 228, I think one big thing that's on the SBEC's mind and TA staff's mind is ensuring that there's a clear understanding and a wide-ranging awareness around the proposed updates to the rules. And so we are in deep discussion around development of webinars for both EPP faculty and staff, and potentially LEA partner faculty staff, to ensure everyone's on the same page around what these shifts and requirements are. I think y'all have seen, we've put together a bunch of different types of documents to date, all of our color-coded changes documents. We do anticipate putting together some additional summary documents that can be just helpful to orient folks to kind of the buckets of changes that we're discussing. We've talked about things like draft communication tools, and tools to support EPPs and communicating with district partners around some of these changes. And then we are hopefully clicking, I don't know what happens, what you click when you publish a website, but whatever you click when you publish a website, we're hoping to do that in the next week to stand up an effective preparation framework website, which over time we would hope to post exemplars of best practices in the field, many of them aligned to some of the components within 228. Wanted to pause here and ask, what other supports or resources would be helpful for the field? I think thinking about the field in the big term here, to build awareness around these changes or to support programs sort of as they're thinking through navigating some of these proposed changes. Gina?
I have recently had some meetings with some of our colleagues in Region 11, as well as through our monthly Council for Educator Preparation meetings with K-12 or regional center community partners. And largely that huge body is not very aware or don't understand and or agree with a lot that's being proposed in TAC 228. So are there going to be some meetings maybe at TASA midwinter, or ways that you all will be communicating with the K-12 population and the regional centers?
Yep, so the regional service centers have gotten briefings around all of these proposed updated requirements. We'll continue to communicate with them to ensure that they're pushing out that communication to district leaders. I think Maryland's also been in pretty consistent communication with leadership in TASPA, kind of from the beginning of this process. We had an opportunity to present at TASPA a few months back. And so really thinking about those avenues of leadership to continue to communicate. But I think that like you elevating that, Gina, I think is spot on for us to say, like, where are there additional avenues that we need to be pushing out this messaging? Because when we do, in those spaces, when we presented the most recent TASPA conference, we got a lot of really great feedback from those HR leaders in the room, and have had some good follow-up conversations as well. So, but I think the more we can continue to push, the better.
Yeah, let me jump in too. I think so. I'm listening to both Gina's point and Jessica, your response. It makes me think, because I've been a part of the conversations with service center leadership about these changes, and heard both support and concerns. So my wondering though is how often do those conversations trickle down further, that get to lower ranks within the organization that are more directly in contact with districts. So I do think that's an area that we can probably be more purposeful. Yeah, all the service center leadership is aware of these changes, has been aware of these changes for several months. We've also done, the commissioner's done some superintendent briefings and updates regarding the changes on his superintendent call. So the word has gotten out. I'm not sure that it's gotten out to the degree that we want it to the people who are going to be most impacted. So I do think that's still work we need to engage in. Liz, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. And I second all the comments that Gina made and the efforts the staff is making. We have so many different routes, different classes. We've got, the teacher classes, superintendent, principal, school counselor. Sometimes, even at a small university like us, those programs are housed in different, sometimes even schools and departments. If it would be possible to create a one-pager related to, say, school counselor and then a reading specialist, so that we have those available, that basically summarizes, this is how your program is changing, so that it makes it easier to communicate directly with the department chairs or directors and the faculty in those departments. I think that would be super helpful, instead of EPPs having to try to cobble that together.
I really like that suggestion, Liz. Absolutely, that's a great point. Meredith Lee.
Yeah, hi. I was just thinking about the kind of the effective schools framework resource suite, and kind of the to your question of like what else would be helpful on the website. Now I know that this isn't just like an artifact on a website, but I know that they have a really stellar diagnostic tool that can kind of help kind of programs evaluate their success related to the framework, and there's like a built-in neutral party to help them facilitate that. So I don't know, I'm curious if there's like an opportunity for that to be something kind of built in the future, or maybe it's already built.
That's a great question, Meredith Lee, and I think I'll just name, we built the EPF website basically off of the exact same sort of structure, same idea as the ESF website. I would say in terms of, so for folks who might not be in this space, for the effective schools framework, there's a corresponding diagnostic process that is facilitated on school campuses to understand sort of areas of strength or areas for improvement relative to what's within the schools framework. I think, Meredith Lee, I think that's where from the beginning of discussions with the SBAC, we've kind of thought about development of the effective preparation framework and ways to actually leverage that in thinking about ways to redesign the continuing approval review process. So that would be similar to that kind of diagnostic, identify areas of strength and areas for improvement relative to like a vision for quality. That's kind of like that same theory of action there. So, but I think in terms of like tools and resources that would be posted on the website, I would anticipate that there would be types of like self-assessment rubrics, like other resources that could help programs kind of like self-reflect like in advance of like more formal continuing approval review.
For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward. I think these suggestions are super helpful and insightful just in terms of how how we can best support programs and districts moving forward. If you have additional insight to share, please don't hesitate to reach out to Jessica or me or Marilyn, and we'll make sure we get that feedback to the right people. Chapter 231.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Beth Burkhart here. We're going to talk about some ongoing conversations we're having around Chapter 231. Primarily, this is addressing personnel assignments for special education teachers. So currently, if you're not familiar with the rule text, currently what we have is that a special education teacher needs to have a certificate that matches the subject and grade level of their teaching assignment. Or they can demonstrate competency in a content area at grade level using what's called the High Objective Uniform State Standard of Evaluation. We shorten that to the House provision. The House provision is problematic right now because it's based on a retired definition of highly qualified. So what we've been discussing is this opportunity to ensure that special education teachers demonstrate their content competency in a way that allows all students to access curriculum at their enrolled grade level. So we've been having many interesting discussions around it. There's a lot to talk about. So we've been talking to the board and talking to our stakeholder groups. We brought this to the board in December and proposed just an initial starting point proposal for what these assignments could look like post-House. We got some feedback, and just this past week and coming up next week, also, we're going to be meeting with the EPSG Special POPs Working Group and the state leadership team on special education to continue to discuss these options for how a teacher can demonstrate competency in that content area. We'll be bringing this back in February as a discussion item again with additional stakeholder feedback. Really wanted to just clarify what where it gets complicated. If we're talking about assignments for elementary and middle school and demonstrating competency in their content areas, it's pretty straightforward because we have core subject exams for those where teachers can demonstrate across content areas that they're competent at that grade level. Same for if you are teaching a single subject in high school and you can demonstrate content competency there. Where it gets more complicated and where these discussions are really centered is a teacher teaching across different content areas assigned in special ed. So full day teaching math, science, social studies, and English language arts and reading in high school. And so how do they demonstrate competency in grade level content? So one option we brought was it last month already? Yes, December is last month, was using the PACT exams as an option or undergraduate hours. The committees are also talking about how to use professional development, how to use years of service. So all options are on the table and there's a lot to talk about. So we really look forward to continued conversation on this. And I think that's all I have for 231 today.
So, Bill, I feel like they always give me the best people to follow, so I'm going to try to model what they talked about, but I am super excited to be able to bring y'all some updates for the world of reading academies, in particular, being able to integrate these into our EPPs. So just to start, I want to talk about the wonderful working groups that we have that are in process. So we were able this year to have the ability to pilot Reading Academy programs as an opt-in with 10 of our programs. We had people represented from across the state looking at both our ACPs, our university-based program. We also had some ESCs that were participating as well. And so I wanted to first just be able to share what is going well. We have had lots of engagement from our teaching candidates and them being able to express how much they have enjoyed being able to do reading academies, both alongside some of their mentor and host teachers, as well as being able to see what this could look like prior to them stepping into a classroom. We have also had a lot of growth from the field side. So maybe some teachers that didn't have the best experience all the time with reading academies now really being able to see the benefit, in particular, in how well prepared those pre-service teachers are coming out into the classroom because they've been able to go through these modules. We've also seen an increase of commitment to complete reading academies, along with having a couple of candidates that had some conflicts, and they were able to be picked up by some other EPPs as well to be able to finish that time. And then again, just getting that positive response from both the principals and the confidence that we've seen in our teacher candidates to be able to implement literacy strategies and really just thrive in that reading space. As we know, as we have some good, we also have some things to consider as far as challenges like within this space as well. And so the biggest challenge that we've seen is just that the modules are very fast paced for some of our teacher candidates. So as they're learning and as they're growing, they have expressed, along with those that are leading the Reading Academy modules, wanting to be able to dive deeper and really take their time to process and digest the information, which, you know, asking to learn more is always a positive. And so being able to find ways to slow down the pace / being able to reiterate the content that they are learning at the time. The other part is being able to figure out how we can be super efficient with reading academies. And this particularly looks like how we're able to integrate these modules into coursework and into scope and sequences that are already occurring on the EPP campuses. The last part that we were looking at is with the pilot programs, all of their candidates are able to go through this at no cost. And so making sure that we are able to figure out how to best support the funding of reading academies, where we're really not asking or putting the expense on our teacher candidates as they're completing these courses. And so from the working group, we have a couple of big key decisions or recommendations that have been made. The first one, which you may have seen in the EPP newsletter, is that EPPs are now able to become authorized providers. So while there's still the option of being able to partner with an authorized provider that is already in existence, you can also be authorized provider, therefore reducing the cost to candidates, as well as being able to provide a little bit more flexibility in when those modules are being completed and how you're integrating them into the coursework. The second part is really being able to divide the modules into multiple semesters. So again, as we look at that feedback from being able to slow down the pacing and being able to provide more opportunity for them to interact with the modules, being able to serve as an authorized provider gives you just that, to where maybe you're completing a couple of modules per course, and really checking for that alignment, again, in that scope and sequence and what they're doing on campuses as they complete their learning. Finally, being able to provide the ability for EPPs to use this as an elective course. And so again, just being able to have it as a standalone and being able to provide more time. So our two, oh, sorry, Jessica, you're good to go to the next slide. Thanks. So again, just highlighting our two options that we have here. Again, EPPs are able to apply to serve as an authorized provider, where they are able to, again, have that flexibility, or you can partner with already existing authorized providers, which is the model that we're currently running through our program. And then Jessica, final slide. And so just to give y'all a timeline, in case you are interested in applying, or if you know people that are interested in applying, the applications officially launched January 10th and they close out mid-February. And we are hoping to have everybody approved and awarded on April 5th. I will drop my email into the chat, and you all are more than welcome to reach out to me if you do have questions, where we can spend a little more time one-on-one looking at the specifics. But super excited for this opportunity and really being able to watch this grow.
Okay, I'm back. I'm going to talk about upcoming adoption of the 230 items, so dealing with certification exams. The headline here is that most of this item is going to adoption in February. There is, well, two exceptions, and one is that we are actively still in the procurement process for the Texas TPA. We don't want to hold up the other items, and we really want to make sure that the board has the full picture before we're asking them to vote on anything. So we're really moving at the speed of quality here and making sure we have all of the information on this project before we can present to the board. I can't say too much more because we're still in that procurement process, but really we want to give the board the full picture of everything before we're asking them to vote on it. So two things that are going to hold off and come back in April as a separate item at proposal will be the operational date for the PPR and adding the Texas-specific TPA as an option alongside Ed TPA. We will continue ahead in February with the new certificates, the aligned certification exams, the residency route certificate, cert by exam, all the test limit waiver things that we've brought before the board for many meetings. So all of that is still going forward. You can go to the
Hey, Beth,
animation. Yes.
Can I jump in for 1 second before we transition? I think just naming that I named for the board in December that I was confident that we would be able to share with them the outcome of that procurement in February. I think just naming the procurement process is taking longer. And I think as Beth named, it's just because we want to really ensure that we've got a quality answer for the board at the end. And so we didn't want to hold up the rest of these rule items, but knowing that, I did name for the board that it would be done in February. It is not, we're still actively in that process, but we don't want the board to have, we want the board to have that full picture, as Beth said, before we ask them to take action here.
Thanks, Jessica. Just as a reminder, these are the upcoming exams. They'll go all the way through 2028. But coming up, if the board goes through and approves these, coming up in September will be the updated health ELAR 712 and the PE exam for EC 12. And then looking way into the future, you'll see in 27 the launch of most of the core subjects exams, with the last core subject exam launching in 2028. Holly?
Hi, Beth, thank you. Just back to the ones that won't be up for adoption until April. I'm just parsing the rule text itself to think about which parts of the rule we're talking about. Is there a way y'all could provide us with that so we kind of know what the specific rule provisions are that won't be up for adoption in February?
So it's really connected to the test chart, Holly. So the last operational date that was added as proposed rule text for the PPR will be struck. And then the language in both 230.21 that references the board taking action by September 2026 on a Texas-specific TPA, and within the testing figure, the placeholder for the Texas-specific TPA. So those are the two changes. So again, walking back regulations, we can make that change at adoption, but it's just the striking of last operational date from PPR, and it's the striking of Texas-specific TPA from the pedagogy column of the testing figure.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then my other question is on the residency route rules. The issue of which test the residents will take to get their certificate, is that settled? Because I know that at the December meeting, a rubric or a draft rubric was given to the board as part of the ongoing discussions about their comfort level with these folks being exempt from the pedagogy test. And so, the chapter 230 rules refer to the fact that these folks will only take a content pedagogy test. So, kind of moving ahead with the adoption of the concept that they will be exempt from a pedagogy certification test, but yet there wasn't, as I recall, much discussion on the rubric at the December meeting. Just wondering what the plans are for getting more input on that from the board, or what the plans are.
Yeah, I think so. To clarify, so in the September meeting, talked around sort of the parameters in terms of requirements that would need to be in place for the board to feel comfortable with not requiring the residency route to take a pedagogy exam. From there, that, we've shored up those requirements within the rules themselves. I know we've also talked about like further rounds of the rubric, but the board's given this direction and the board voted on the component within 230.39 that says that the candidates will only be required to take a content pedagogy test. So they've already taken their action to say that to recommendation to move ahead with that in their vote on 230.
Can you remind me, Jessica, what but there was a rubric distributed to them in December, right?
Correct. I think
what I'm trying to.
I actually would like, we were talking about them in concert in September just to say like, hey, here's the things that here's the type of artifacts we're looking for. Here's the things we're looking for when we will review programs to ultimately recommend to the SBEC for approval. I'd actually bifurcate those at this time. What we were actually just talking about was just naming for the board that we're still working on the like overall for review and approval of a residency route for a program. Here's the type of criteria or specific look-fors in terms of evidence that we would be gathering in that process. So I would actually separate them at this point in terms of conversation, because the conversation around the content pedagogy exam requirement is sort of, we've already kind of nailed that down. The conversation around the like rubric or evaluation process for the residency route was more just a continued update for the board on progress.
But the rubric itself has the performance gates section in it, right? I mean,
Yes,
that was,
yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, I guess I had understood that there would be more discussion about the quality criteria that were part of that section of the rubric.
And we've taken all the feedback that stakeholders gave us on that rubric so far, and we've been working on additional drafts internally. And so there will be additional opportunities for some stakeholder feedback on that. I think, just trying to calibrate at the right level of quality descriptor, ensuring though that we're staying like adhering to the heart of the rule text itself. I think probably that was part of the back and forth in like our stakeholder group too, was to what point are we writing criteria that's just writing the rules again. So I think we've been really thinking about that deeply since our last stakeholder conversation, but no, there'll be additional opportunity for stakeholder engagement there. But the conversation around the content pedagogy exams is sort of now a separate part of this.
Okay, moving into a petition for rulemaking that was received at the last meeting. Cameron was having some technical difficulties. Cameron, are you with us?
I think I got it figured out. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we sure can.
Awesome. Okay, so we received a petition for rulemaking just before the December meeting. The government code requires that we either initiate rulemaking or deny the petition within 60 days of receipt. So I am going to drop it here in the chat for y'all to review. If you have questions, concerns, feedback, please reach out to me. We are still analyzing all the requests in this rulemaking petition to present to the board in February. Okay, it should be coming through now. That's all I have.
Cameron, you want to drop your email address in the chat too, just in case folks want to reach out to you directly after they have a chance to look at it.
Sure. You can also reply to the EPSG meeting agenda email I sent out in case you don't catch it in the chat.
Okay, guys, this is a quick overview of our February meeting agenda. You'll see that it is action heavy between our adoption and action items. Makes good sense as we've been in the discussion stage for quite a while on several things in move to proposal in December on those. So you see those just making their way through the rulemaking process. At adoption, we've got the chapter 228 that we talked about today, 233, 239, and 230, all of which we've discussed today in this meeting. We'll also be adopting the 2022-23 ASAP accreditation statuses. Can y'all hear me? I'm getting feedback that I'm quiet, but my volume's all the way up. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah? No? Shoot. Okay, I'm just gonna use my teacher voice and yell at my computer screen. Then we have other action items not rule related, including the ASAP accreditation statuses, our EPP commendations. We're excited to visit with the board about those. And then again, the petition for rulemaking that just landed in your chat box. We are looking at a proposal for admission requirements. This is related to the counselor. No, this is not related to the counselor work. This is
Broader slate of certification redesign efforts.
oh, attached to the rest. This is part of the happy family. Sorry, guys. And then at discussion this time, we are going to be looking at personnel assignments in chapter 231, as well as Marilyn will be bringing a chapter 230 item related to ongoing discussions with the field about English language proficiency requirements. So it's going to be an action heavy meeting, some great discussions. Feel like it's going to be a really productive use of our great board's time. And our next meeting will be March 26th. Really want to highlight this because we are shifting from a Friday to a Tuesday for this meeting, so that we can make sure all of our staff and colleagues are able to participate in Good Friday to whatever degree they do. Good Friday would have been our normal scheduled meeting, but we want to avoid that date out of deference to this group. So please go ahead and mark your calendars for March 26th, which is a Tuesday. That'll be the next time that we are all together in this forum. I don't believe we've gotten any general questions in the chat other than, can I increase my volume a little? So sorry for yelling at the group. Yelling and it sounding quiet is still kind of a weird thing, but I think that is the full agenda for us today. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here and for joining us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any member of the team regarding follow-up thoughts or questions if those come up later in the day or early next week. We're certainly here to and want to be responsive to your input. So thank you again. Appreciate everyone's time today. Please have a wonderful weekend and stay warm and safe. Thanks, everybody.